Residential bond hacks with expert property manager Cleo Witt here. We're going to talk about residential bonds and the complications about getting them back in the end and what to do around that. So stay tuned. Spicy topic, Miss Cleo, spicy topic, bonds.
Yes, it's one of the most typically asked questions when tenants move out. How do they get their bond back? What happens with that whole process?
So I guess to start from the top, you're going to rent a property. It's $500 a week. The agents or the owner are going to ask you for a 4-week bond. It's like as a security for the property. So in case you do any damage to the property that's not wear and tear, the bond will protect the owner on that. So that's 4 weeks. $500 is $2,000. Now, people may not know it doesn't sit in the agent's account. It sits with the residential bond board. Have I missed anything?
And it gains no interest.
Got it. So the interest is a nominal amount, not even worth considering, and like it's a couple bucks, isn't it?
I had a tenant that was in a property for like 20 years, and it was like $1.20 or something.
So the government gets to enjoy this money, in bonds.
Yes, they have. They have millions of dollars there, and the tenants don't get anything other than it just sit there for that time.
Now, one thing I'd add: the bonds don't have to be topped up. So with a residential bond, if the rent doubles over a 10 or 20 year period, you don't have to top up your bond at any time. The original bond's just fine.
Yes, that's right.
The bond gets paid when you sign your lease, is that correct?
At the same time as your 2 weeks that you pay, you also pay the bond. It's all lodged online now. It used to be paper where you signed for it. Now it's all done through a link to the tenant, and then they get a unique number that's just for their tenancy, and then we add that to our software program that ties that money to that tenant.
Okay, now here's where it gets curly. So the tenant's been there for 1, 2, 3, 5 years. A tenant sometimes starts short paying their rent, and they say you can use the bond instead.
Yes, so we usually don't encourage that. The bond is meant for maintenance and repairs or cleaning or damages that might have occurred during the tenancy. It's not there for rent. However, in the instance where we've done a pre-vacate or something and we know the tenant's been a good tenant and they might just be in a pinch and they need to pay another bond and they might only have a week or two, sometimes we'll allow it, we'll consider it and say, okay, well, we'll claim that rent money from the bond because we're not anticipating any issues at the tenancy. But yes, it's not meant for rent, to consolidate those last few weeks before you move.
And something, so guys, if you just tuned in, we're talking about residential bonds today, the hacks for tenants that they can employ with their residential bond. Something that we should mention is that we are not the decision makers, we are the stakeholders, and often it's up to the landlord as to how that bond gets handled and up to the tenant, because it's a stake held on both people's behalf. So agents, I think, often think they have this autonomy over a bond, where it's not really. They're acting on behalf of both these people as custodians, with this bond. So it's delicate, so delicate that if there's not an agreement, off to tribunal it goes. So Cleo, with a residential bond, where do you see this go wrong when a tenant moves out of a property?
Usually when they run out of time for cleaning purposes. That is one of the most contentious points, having carpets cleaned, even though legislatively you don't always have to have the carpets steam cleaned now. But if they're stained or dirty, you know, the ovens, shower grout, all the things that, you know, you run out of time to clean at the end of a tenancy, those things are usually what a bond would be claimed for. Another thing we find that's a little bit of a hurdle is when an owner wants to move in right away and it doesn't give the tenant an opportunity to remedy anything in the property. If you're an owner and you want to move straight in, for example, tenant moves out today, you want to move in tomorrow, if there's anything that needs to be negotiated, the property needs to remain untouched. And a lot of owners don't know that. So if you go in and you start moving your furniture in and fixing some things or whatever, and then you're wanting the tenant to come back and do something, the bond is actually null and void in the eyes of NCAT, because it could be argued whatever during that process the owner's been in the property, they could have damaged something. So if you are wanting bond money from your tenant and you are moving back into your investment, you need to have a bit of a buffer. And it's not ideal always, you know, in the perfect world, but
Yeah.
if you, yeah, so that's another thing.
Well, everyone's working to a timeline, so it gets tight. And I can see what you've spoken about, the oven cleaning and the shower grout and the carpet cleaning. Often it's out of scope for people where these good oven cleaners that we employ are freaks of nature and they get it beautiful. Then same
Honestly,
with
they are.
carpet cleaning. They are, and even with the carpet cleaners we use, compared to when someone hires it from Bunnings, the carpet cleaner from Bunnings and tries to do it themselves. So often people go, you know what, I'm just going to leave the real hard work out of scope to, you know, get the agent to handle it. It'll be probably cheaper in the end, and less work. So, Cleo, one thing that I do find with landlords is they feel very righteous about that bond. I do have to say, and tenants often won't know this, but we really are often sticking up for the tenant for the diplomatic right of the tenant to say, you know, hey, no, Mr. Landlord, we can't say that or do that, or no, Mr. Landlord, we can't do that or say that in relation to the bond. No, Mr. Landlord, we can't do that. So often, I think a tenant sees us pulling them up and saying, you know, this is what you have to do. But I hear it all the time with a great property manager, you know, reading the riot act to the landlord as well, saying, hang on a sec, there's a line we have to walk here, make sure you don't step over it.
Yeah, I often say it's not your money. Like, it's a harsh way to describe it, but it's the tenant's money at this point. And if you are wanting to make a claim, it has to be a legitimate claim. And we run through all, you know, the scenarios and where an owner could make a claim. And sometimes they don't agree with us, and we do bat for the tenant a lot. We also give the tenant an opportunity well in advance to look for the things that we will be looking for at the final inspection, so they do get their bond back right away, because we know most tenants are moving into another property. They need that money. It's a lot of money, 4 weeks. So we tend to say, you know, if you got a professional cleaner, ideally we can come in with the owner and be very, very quick. You might get your bond within 48 hours. That's the quickest time frame you can get it if we release it. But if you've got to go back and there's little niggly things, you know, it can take up to a week or two, you know, while both parties are happy. So in that respect, yeah, but yeah, we do protect that money for the tenants, and we do also, you know, help the owner if their property's being mistreated, for sure.
Step through it. So there's tolerance towards wear and tear. Like if, you know, if the carpet's a little bit worn over a 10-year period, or, you know, if there's wear and tear, natural wear and tear, that will be considered and most part accepted. But it's when there's sort of malicious damage and stuff, that's when it can come across the bond. Now, something that the biggest bond hack from today that I want to talk about for people to cover their bums is the ingoing condition report. It is the holy grail. It is the Bible of moving out. Can you tell us about that and
It
why it's
is.
important in relation to the bond?
Yeah, so a property manager typically looks at the photos. When a tenant gives notice and it's getting close to them moving out, we'll source our network. We'll look at the photos that we took, usually about 200 photos at the start of their tenancy. Become familiar with it. We take the report, like you said, the holy grail, the Dead Sea Scroll, and we'll take it with us to the property, and we'll compare. So wherever it said, a little stain, or, the walls were brand new, we'll compare those comments with photos. And tenants get 2 copies of the ingoing at the start, so they can keep 1 copy for when they do move out. And then they too can go through and check everything to make sure that, apart from wear and tear, everything is the same. That can save you a lot of time, especially if you're unsure if, was that blind broken? I can't remember if that panel had fallen off during my tenancy, if it was like that. You can always check and have that conversation with your property manager in advance. I've had tenants that have looked at the condition report and gone, oh, you know what, I've done this, I need to fix that. Can we get a handyman, contact number? And then they'll get that done. And then when keys are handed over, it's seamless and very quick because we've already sorted that out,
I think you've nailed it, guys. With bonds, be careful. Big lesson out of today is that ingoing report. Make sure you keep a hold of it. Make sure it's done properly by the agent or the landlord. Make sure that when you move out, you pull that little puppy out and start comparing before and afters to make sure you can get it as close as possible, considering wear and tear.
Hope that helps some people moving out at the moment.
Thanks, Cleo. Cheers. Have a great day.